idea if this is actually live or not, because there's no one behind the camera, so if this cuts in randomly, that's probably why. And speaking of randomly interesting from the comment section, my good buddy Adam Steeper.
Hey guys.
So Jeff Weibel couldn't be here today, so we figured we'd get Adam to come out from behind the camera and just sit down and chat with us. And as well, you know, it's been a while since we just kind of had a chance to chat, us, one-on-one, Matt to camera, so I figured if you guys want, feel free to treat this kind of as an AMA and ask me anything. Just jump in the comment section, smash that like button if you're enjoying the video, and yeah, otherwise I figured we'd just kind of start off this show talking some high-level stuff. So I've recently started researching a lot into cryptocurrency. I think me and Adam both, the idea is we've been aware of its existence for a long time, but we haven't really paid attention to what's actually going on in that sphere. Is that fair to say here?
That's right, yeah. I've been following cryptocurrency and Bitcoin in some capacity for probably 5 or 6 years. Should have bought some then, never did. But yeah, we're aware of it. Maybe gonna get into it someday soon here.
Yeah, and so that's one of the things I was hoping to chat with you guys about. So my first question for you guys is, do you currently own any cryptocurrencies? If so, what cryptocurrencies are those? But in addition, do you own those cryptocurrencies, or do you view it as an investment? Do you view it as a gamble? Because to me, the more and more I've started digging into cryptocurrencies and trying to really understand what's behind them, the more I realize that it's hard. So, you know, I understand that there's different viewpoints on this, but to me it still feels like there's naturally going to be a couple default main winners. And being able to predict who wins the race in the cryptocurrency sphere to me seems really difficult. I know some people argue that, like, no, that's not, you're looking at it the wrong way. Bitcoin's already won and they're already big enough and they have enough distribution that they're going to exist no matter what. And that everything else is just like that you can heuristically change things on the fly. I get it, sort of, but also I feel like I'm not quite there yet. My brain hasn't fully wrapped around the idea.
I think a lot of it comes down to the regulations, right? There's a lot of people toting the drum, trying to bring regulation into the industry, and until then, I don't think you can really declare a clear winner.
Yeah, and that's for sure. I know a lot of people are concerned about how the government gets involved. I know there's a huge other faction that says it doesn't matter what the government does, there's no way to control it. And I started listening or reading up more on like Zcash and like Zencash and like coin tumblers and ways that they're able to essentially make it hard to even identify whose wallet the coins went to and from, so that you essentially don't have the risk of someone even being able to trace back to like the IP address or anything like that. So like it's really weird. And then, so one thing I kind of always thought about cryptocurrencies was this huge fear of quantum computing. And I still haven't seen a great answer for it, but I've seen some like really intelligent people in that sphere talk about it, and they seem to not care at all. And so I think the logic behind that is the idea that they'll grow in parallel. So essentially the moment we have quantum decrypting, we'll also have quantum encrypting. So like essentially they'll just see a fork almost immediately occur. I don't know if I buy that. It's still really interesting. I need to do way more research on it. But like I understand in principle the theory behind it, and I agree that probably the amount of turbulence or disturbances or disruption that would occur, that's probably only going to be for a very short period of time.
Yeah, sure.
But that short period of time could destroy some of the winners and make brand new new front runners in this sphere. So I think that to me is an interesting question mark. It's a future problem. It's not a problem that I expect is going to impact cryptocurrencies or encryption in general for years to come. And again, I know that lots of people will probably jump in the comment section and say things like, listen, even if quantum computing occurs and they're able to crack the ciphers that are involved in cryptocurrencies as of today, there's way bigger things to go after. Why not take down the US government if you can do quantum computing? Or why not take down the Chinese government or all the other why not take down Visa or MasterCard instead of going after a cryptocurrency, which is actually still a relatively small piece of the pie? And so that's also a good, interesting argument. I find myself constantly going in circular arguments with a lot of the stuff on cryptocurrencies. I love the idea of blockchain though. And so speaking of that, I've been trying to spend a lot of time thinking about how do I get involved in cryptocurrencies without trying to gamble, without trying to pick a winner? because as far as I'm concerned, I have no competitive advantage when it comes to looking at which cryptocurrency or which technology is going to be the winner. I think there's a lot smarter programmers out there that live and breathe this shit, so the idea of me somehow being able to suss out who's going to be the inherent forerunner, I think is naive. So I've been looking at, I think you can still make money in cryptocurrencies without buying cryptocurrencies, right?
Yeah, I know we've chatted about this a little bit off camera, and you had a great metaphor the other day you used. You're not gonna sell the oil. You're gonna service the oil industry, right? So you're not gonna mine the bitcoins or buy the bitcoins, but you can build infrastructures around the services that are going to need to be developed for that industry, right?
Yeah, and so some of that stuff is, you know, looking at potentially investing in exchanges, looking at buying and running ATMs, so cryptocurrency ATMs, looking at even just like the underlying like companies that are building the infrastructure to mine cryptocurrencies, right? So buying graphics card companies or buying computer manufacturers and all that stuff, I think is just as interesting, and it's way less sexy, which often means it's going to be less volatile. And so I think that that's the same thing. You know, often in Canada, we're really familiar with the oil industry. Alberta, it's a huge impact on both Alberta's economy as well as Canada's in general. And so what we'll often see is these oil's a relatively volatile commodity, and so we'll see these big booms and busts in the price cycle. But what ends up happening is the oil companies, the companies that are actually mining the oil, the companies that are actually drilling for oil, they see these huge crazy swings, but there's a whole other industry that's just supporting them, like Adam was talking about. And I think that those industries are really interesting, and they're still being relatively overlooked today. They're not getting the same hype that an Ethereum or other altcoins are getting when they do their initial ICOs. So one of the questions I want to put forward to you guys: should I buy a cryptocurrency ATM? So I've been doing some research on this. I think it's a really interesting idea. It seems like my total risk, my total outlay isn't significant. We're maybe talking $5,000 to buy one ATM. Then you need to find a location, cut a deal with the location provider, and then you just pick up your cash. Or at least that's the way they pitch it. And so essentially, the way it works is literally you'd have your cell phone, and on your cell phone you'd have a QR code that's your wallet. You hold it up to the ATM, it scans it, and then you insert your cash, buy whatever amount of that cryptocurrency. The ones I'm looking at only do, I think, Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, and maybe one other. So you're really only focusing on like the big ones. Yeah. But what I like about it is it's less volatile inherently, right? My initial outlay is going to be about this $5,000, and that's pretty much my total exposure. So I don't have a lot more downside other than that $5,000. Now, an argument could be made if I spent that $5,000 in Bitcoin, my total exposure in Bitcoin is $5,000 as well. Agreed. But from my perspective, the difference is with the Bitcoin analogy, I need to harvest, right? I need to harvest my gains in order to reap any benefit from it. Where the ATM seems much more like a business. It's less speculation, in my opinion. And at the end of the day, there should be some inherent value to that ATM. Maybe it's not worth $5,000, but surely I could sell it for $500 in a pinch. You would think that there'd still be some value there. So yeah, anyways, I just kind of want to put it to you guys, the audience. Let me know, what do you think about cryptocurrencies? What do you think about cryptocurrency ATMs? Would you use one? Have you used one? Did you pay that like crazy 10% service charge? Would you pay me a 10% service charge? Because it seems like a good margin. And then otherwise, one other thing, and so actually we haven't even talked about this yet, Adam, so this is going to be a surprise to him too. But Adam's familiar, I've been dealing with a private seller for like the last year. It's been literally over a year now that I've been dealing with this private seller. I'll just call him by his first name, David. And so actually Adam's involved. We're trying to buy a portfolio of properties off of David. And essentially right now it's 4 properties we're trying to acquire from him. Me and Adam are trying to acquire one of them together. I'm going to acquire the other 3 with another partner. So back and forth, it's been like gong show. Right? I won't bore you guys with all the backstory, but essentially what happened was we agreed to prices multiple times throughout the last year. He keeps incrementally increasing it by $5,000, and I just keep agreeing because I'm a sucker apparently. And so the last time we left it, I was really upset with him. We didn't really discuss it on camera, but me and Adam's aware of it. And so essentially what happened was he got appraisals done on his property before he signed the papers for me to make my offers, and he decided to increase the purchase prices significantly. And by significantly, I mean when we initially started talking, I was talking around 135 per property. He'd slowly worked me up to 145, so I was already up about $10,000, or let's call it 8%, 7% over what I'd initially planned on spending. Still a good deal though, so I was happy. Then what he decided to try and do was increase the one purchase price to 170 on one of the properties, and the other one to 155.
The property we were looking at.
Yeah, so the one we were looking at, he tried to increase to 170. So essentially, he was increasing at 35,000 over what we'd initially agreed to, or 25,000 over what we had most recently agreed to. And I had enough. I CC'd Adam, my other business partner, on the email. I was like, guys, let me know if you think I'm being too emotional about this, but I'm just fucking sick and tired of David. And so, thankfully, Adam and Mitt both kind of at least understood my perspective. So anyways, fast forward, we talked it through with him. He agreed that he maybe had misphrased what he was trying to do, so we'll give him the benefit of the doubt on that. So we came back to that 145 price range. Me and Adam signed the papers on like Tuesday night. I submitted them Tuesday. He had them until Thursday at 6 p.m. to get back to me. Crickets. It had classic David.
How many? We've sent a few.
So we've literally sent 3 offers, and like these aren't blind offers. These are offers where I've discussed the entire set of terms with him and told him the deadline of irrevocability on these terms.
And then they're clean offers too.
Yeah.
We've been through the house before. We don't even need to walk back through the property again.
Right? It's literally just conditional on finance.
Yeah.
And we literally have the financing in place, but the financer says, guys, technically I need a purchase and sale agreement if I'm going to give you financing. So anyways, he gets back to me, well, he doesn't get back to me today. I leave him a voicemail being like, David, just letting you know the irrevocability passed on the 2 properties again. Like, if you're actually interested, let me know. And so anyways, he gets back to me today, and he's rewritten the offers back at the higher price now.
Okay.
And he's trying to tell us it's in our best interest.
The 170?
Yeah. And so you can tell Adam's unimpressed with that. And so like right now, I barely even know what to do with this private seller. Like it's one of these things where like I feel like I got the fish on the hook, and then you're like, okay, I'm going to give him a little line, let him get really sucked in, and then you're like, okay, now I got him, and he just keeps breaking free somehow. And so I just want to put it to you guys, how long would you put up with a shitty private seller? Would you take over a year closing a deal if it meant getting that deal? Or would you free yourself up from the mental stress and taxation and just move on and start chasing other deals? I guess what I'm trying to ask is, should I start playing hard to get, or should I still just be easy and bend over? I'm not really sure. And the weird thing is, the way he phrased the email essentially was, okay, I know this is different than what we last talked about, but this is how I think it's in your best interest.
What were those reasons? I'm curious.
Well, not to get too
more money.
That's pretty much it.
Okay.
And so it's a complicated deal where we're potentially looking at assuming some of his mortgages. So he's trying to explain how that works. But essentially, even on the deal where we're just going to assume, I was really excited to bring this deal to you guys. One of the deals that me and Mitt were looking at, we were essentially going to acquire property with 0% down. We were going to assume a mortgage, which is actually really difficult these days. And if you've seen my videos on No Money Down, I explain how rare this is. But I was really excited to do this for you guys and kind of show and document it for you. And even this thing where he'd originally told me, well, the mortgage you're going to assume is about 150, 155. Now we're finding out it's 162. So again, that price just increased like another $7,000. And it's just always something with this guy. So I just wondered, tell me your crazy horror stories in the comment section down below about private sellers, because I'd love for someone else to be feeling my pain right now. But yeah, I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with that. I think what my current thoughts are, Adam, feel free to interject at any point, but my current thoughts on this deal are, I'm just going to resubmit everything exactly how I did last time. Say this is my last and final offer, David. Maybe you're a fan of the show and you're watching, and this is all just, you're going to release a set of videos.
Sign the papers back this time.
Maybe he's just going to release a video immediately after this, how I fucked Matt around for a year straight. But yeah, I think I'm going to make one last final ditch effort where I'm going to say, this is exactly how it is. No ifs, ands, or buts. This is how it's got to be. And
I mean, I'm on board for that. John Kepler in the comments right now had a great suggestion. He's just saying, play hardball. Like, let's walk away for 90 days. Convince him we're the only deal in town. We're the only game in town. And
that's a great point, John. So my only question is, when sometimes he takes 90 days to get back to one of my emails or phone calls, will he realize that I'm playing hard to get? Or will he simply think that this is our usual back and forth? But no, John's completely right. That's a great suggestion. And most recently, when he tried to pull this stunt the first time, and I said, like, no, we're doing this with 145 man, I essentially told him, like, take it or leave it. And that's when he seemed to get serious. But then once papers were in hand, he forgot everything again.
Cold again, I guess, right?
Yeah. So I don't know. I seem to really have a difficult time building up. I don't know. I don't know, guys.
I have recollections. I think I was on vacation in July, and you called me all stoked up about we're going to submit another offer on this house. It sounds like we're going to get the deal done this time around. And that was 7 months ago. Yeah. And so deal exhaustion is starting to set in. I'm not going to lie here. Yeah.
And so I guess the only good thing about that is that the reason we even found this private seller was he owned a property adjacent to one me and Adam already owned. That one's been the renovation from hell, so we're still renovating that property a year later. So thankfully, I guess, we didn't have to close on this property, so like, I don't know. I'm trying to look on the back side of things.
Well, the good thing is we got proximity, I guess, on our side. Where we've got people renovating our property right now, so we've got electricians, plumbers, general contractors in there. City of London inspectors show up when they actually are scheduled to show up. But we've got proximity on our side, so we should be able to see if anyone else is like taking a look at the house, willing to make another offer.
And one of the nice thing is,
fast.
Like most of the properties I'm looking at on, like the properties I'm almost always looking at. I thought I just saw that. Man, I appreciate the super chat from Aiden O'Hare. It really does. Cool. Thank you so much.
I think that's because I'm here.
I was just going to say, is there a correlation there or causation? But yeah, so to break down this property and this group of portfolio properties, very similar to the properties I often deal with. So there are some headaches. We know that there's some zoning issues, some rental licensing issues on all of his properties. So essentially what that means is we don't have to worry about a Toronto buyer walking in and just buying it as a turnkey property. It's really unlikely for that to occur. So we do know there's some safety there. We also know this guy's a shady businessman, that he's always dodging Peter because he owes Paul type things. So again, it's not going to be a clean process for him to simply sell to someone else. So John and Adam are probably right. I probably just need to play it bigger, harder ball. Maybe we'll sign back at 140. Maybe that'll actually get him
back a little bit.
Go back to be like, man, do you remember the offer I made you in January 2018 that was 135? I'll beat it by $5,000.
And like as Matt mentioned, there are a few caveats with the property, right? Which the risk we're willing to take on. Another benefit I think is that it has a shared lane with our property, right? So that's going to deter some investors that either don't want to get into knowing your neighbors or getting in a potential dispute. And we're kind of in a similar boat where, like, if we could own both sides of the property, so we could own the lane, why wouldn't we, right? So we're in a bit of a benefit there, where that's maybe going to scare away some investors.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree with it. And so, I just really want the property. I really love the idea of having houses in a row. That's not a logical thing. Although I know our buddy Kellen's going through the exact same thing on a different private deal. We were talking about it last night. And so, I guess just a general tip for you guys. The private deal we're working on now, as well as the other 3 properties that are from the same seller, the way that came about was I just made it known to my network that any property that's adjacent to one of the properties I own, I'm extra interested in buying. And so what we did was literally one of our tenants, Mike, shout out to Mike Crampton, he's our floor guy. If you guys need someone to refinish hardwood floors, hit Mike up. But I essentially just told him, man, if you know of anyone that lives in the Old East Village, and they're a tenant and they got shitty landlord, let's put them in contact with me and maybe I can get a hold of their landlord, buy the property, turn around, and they'll have a better landlord. And that's literally what happened, and it turned out it was the property right beside ours. I love that fact. And in Kellen's situation, the way it worked about was he just literally knocks on his neighbor's doors and introduces himself. nice, friendly guy. You don't go for the ask immediately. You build up some rapport, and then you just kind of mention to them that you're looking for other income properties. And if they're ever thinking about selling, maybe they should contact you before they contact a realtor. That way they'll save that 2 or 3, 5% potentially, depending on whether they're going with a full broker or not. So,
Cal's actually in the comments here. He said we should sign back at $1. So maybe like a Price is Right kind of rule. Like, no, 170 is overbid, so I'm gonna bet $1. So
I like that.
That's maybe an option we could try, right?
Yeah. And so yeah, otherwise, feel free to jump in the comment section, hit us up with your questions, and back to Aiden, who gave us a super chat. Is there anything you'd like us to answer right now? I'd be more than happy to dive into a question. But otherwise, the real estate market in London, Ontario is still crazy. Not sure if you guys saw, but I went down to Windsor for a CF2GO meetup on Wednesday night, and Windsor's just as crazy as it is in London. I was talking to a real estate agent there, Cassidy. Shout out to her. She works at Royal LePage or Remax, one of the two. It starts with an R. And she was telling me that she's been taking out a set of clients to look at income properties. They just want to buy like a nice duplex, maybe something they can burn, maybe turnkey, they don't really care. And the last 2 properties that they've looked at and submitted offers on have received 11 offers, have sold for above 10% over asking with cash deals. So immediately they're locking those deals down. This is only speculation, but like a lot of us in London, Ontario, she was speculating in Windsor, Ontario, there's a lot of out-of-town buyers, a lot of people coming down the 401 corridor, coming down from the GTA. All you rich fat cats in the GTA just making it rain your hundreds of thousands of dollars and buying our properties in cash. But the rest of us are still just grinding in mortgages, dealing with Davids.
Driving up these prices.
Right? Yeah. But yeah, I just thought that was interesting. And yet, with all that being said, it sounds like in the world of student rentals, there's still some pretty interesting opportunities around the University of Windsor. They were telling me you can buy bedrooms in Windsor for like $30,000, $40,000 a bedroom, where in London these days, you're actually really lucky to even get it for $50,000. You're almost talking $60,000 a bedroom now. So that means that, you know, that 5-bedroom house in London, Ontario, that's a student rental is going to cost you like $600,000. Where the same house in Windsor might be somewhere between like $150,000 to $200,000. And the even cooler thing is you're allowed 6 bedrooms in Windsor in your student rentals. We're here in London, Ontario. Me and Adam own a student rental together. We're only allowed 5 bedrooms in our student rental unless you have a grandfathered in and you can prove it. It's a huge hassle, and unfortunately we're not able to do that in our neighborhood. I know Dan Warren, he has similar pains in the Thurman, Fleming, Farnsborough, and Prosperity neighborhoods. Still great neighborhoods, still great cash flow. It's just 6 bedrooms is better than 5. Otherwise, what else is going on? I guess I already complained to you guys about my first world problems. Talked about cryptocurrencies.
How was the On Fire meetup? I didn't make it.
Oh yeah, so yeah, last night we had the London On Fire meetup. It was fantastic. Great group of people as always. I didn't do a head count. I bet we had at least 40 people off and on. Thankfully, Palisade North had a private room for us again, so we weren't all squished in around a couple of tables. So tons of nice space. There's a video on my YouTube channel just documenting that meetup, so feel free to jump over there after you watch this video, after you've already smashed the like button on this video, and you can kind of get a little taste of what the average London Fire meetup's like. But it was really cool. Dan from Sarnia was down, so
I saw you went live for a little while. I was watching it.
And so Dan, if you're not familiar, he's the real estate investor. He was actually, I think, the very first investor or the second investor I did like an interview with, and went down to Sarnia. He owned like an abandoned water park and an abandoned theme park. And sorry, it looked like the screen cut out there for a second. I had the right time. And they turned it into an axe throwing, archery, tag, beach volleyball epicenter for Sarnia, so that's super cool. Otherwise, he was telling us some of the pains he's going through getting a property rezoned from residential back to residential. Sounds like it should be easy, but sometimes it's harder than you think.
City red tape, right?
Right, yeah. And we've been feeling that pain on one of our projects for literally ever. But at least we passed our framing inspection, so that was cool.
Yes.
But back to London Fire, it was fantastic. Kellen was there. He was giving away free Stefan Arnio books. I was there giving away free Jacob Lund-Fisker books. Gave away another 3 yesterday, so that was fantastic. It's always great just come out and see people. There was a few people that hadn't been out in a long time, so it was awesome. Chris, who's another YouTuber here in London, a gamer YouTuber and a real estate agent, he came out, so that was awesome to see Chris. We didn't really get a chance to chat, but I definitely, yeah, it's one of those things that honestly just come out. Even if you're kind of nervous about coming out, everyone's super friendly, and if someone doesn't naturally strike up a conversation with you, don't be afraid to just jump into a conversation and introduce yourself. Honestly, the moment you've shaken hands or made eye contact with a person, they'll just open up and share with you. So feel free to just ask them a question that's on your mind. Hey, are you a real estate investor? Hey, do you invest in stocks? What do you think about cryptocurrencies? And guaranteed, they won't shut up until you interrupt them. So everyone's more than happy to share their expertise. So I cannot recommend enough that you come out and join London on Fire's Facebook group. That's the easiest way to find us. As well, we have the On Fire podcast, so that's onfirepodcast.ca. Kellen will correct me in the comments section if I'm wrong. But we're also always looking for more people to come on our podcast. So, and you don't have to be already financially independent in order to jump onto the podcast. All we want is to document people's journeys, their alternative lifestyles, and just kind of how they're approaching life in an unusual approach. If you're breaking out of the 9 to 5, if you're living a purposeful life, you're the sort of person we want to chat with. Same with if you're literally right now going through bankruptcy and you're just learning to get control of your personal finances. I think you have a fantastic story that would be amazing on the podcast. So definitely hit up Kellen on Facebook or Instagram. I'd rather you hit him up because I get enough DMs these days. But I do appreciate it, guys.
We got a couple questions here, and actually Aiden, our super chat person tonight, actually did get back to us with a question.
Okay, let's jump into this first.
He was wondering if you guys are going to do more Smash or Pass.
Yes, so we are going to do more Smash or Pass. Me and Michael Rosehart just need to coordinate. And what we're going to do with Smash or Pass is we probably need to create a different Instagram account to track this, but essentially what we want is for you guys to DM us on Instagram your deals, right? So send us that MLS listing or the Realtor.ca listing or the Kijiji or Craigslist ad that you're using to look at this deal, and we'd love to tell you whether we'd smash or pass on your deal. So definitely there will be more Smash or Pass because it's also just fun, to be honest. Like looking at deals is some of the funnest part and trying to figure out how you approach it. So
yeah, so that kind of falls into a second question, I guess. Would you guys ever consider doing different countries like Australia? And so I asked some clarification on this, and he's saying like, would you look at different investment properties and like compare, this region to this region?
Yeah, we'd be not experts on the subject matter, but we'd be more than open to trying it. It's one of those things where the moment we get outside of North America, we're far less familiar with the regulatory environment as well as kind of the lending environment. But beyond that, a lot of real estate rules are pretty fundamental. They're pretty global in nature. So we'd still be looking. In Australia or New Zealand, can you get that 1% deal? If you're in Eastern Europe, can you get 1% deal? Those sort of things. Does the property cash flow? What sorts of overhead and expenses can you incur? So yeah, absolutely, we'd be happy to do Australia Smash or Pass. So
cool. Kellen actually had a question too that talking back to our property.
Okay, yeah.
Doing a bid, talking with David. So how do you avoid merging the two lots side by side? Yeah.
So this is a common issue.
And so he says like if you can't buy under another name or don't want to start a corp, how difficult is this process? So he's asking us a hard question.
Yeah. But so just so kind of people understand in general, the way it works, at least in Canada and Ontario, I think that this is an issue in a lot of places though. But so like let's say, I assume this will work. Let's say you have lot number 1 here and lot number 2. You own lot 1 and you're about to buy lot number 2. What can happen is the titles will actually merge, so these become one lot. And the problem with that is once they merge, it's extremely difficult, if not sometimes almost outright impossible, to unmerge the titles. And the reason that having a title merge in the first place is undesirable is because it makes your buyer pool when you go to resell much more limited, right? So the idea is it's a lot easier for a person to buy one or the other. The moment they have to buy 2, they need a bigger down payment, they need higher borrowing capacity, all that stuff. So the question is, how can we keep it from getting merged? The first thing is, you would think society could just figure this shit out and this wouldn't even be an issue, but it's actually complicated and you have to jump through a bunch of stupid hoops. So the most common solutions, which Kellen doesn't want to use, of course, are buy it with a partner and have essentially. So let's say Adam owns lot 1 and he's completely on title and he wants to buy lot 2. What he can do is he can buy lot 2 with, say, his partner or a brother or a family member and put them on title for 1%. So Adam would own 99% of this property and his partner or his brother or his parents would own 1% of it. That would keep the titles from merging simply because there's technically different owners as far as the law is concerned because it's not identical. The alternative is people will buy it in a corporation. So they'll set up a corporation and have the corporation buy it. Again, that corporation is treated as a completely separate legal entity, so the titles aren't going to merge on you. So those are really the two solutions. Me personally, we've actually done both on properties I own. So we have set it up in a corporation and the corporation buys property 1 and then we bought property 2 in our own names and they're not going to merge because they're separate legal entities. We've also done the 1% thing where I bought lot 1 and then my partner bought lot 2, but we owned lot 3 as well and that was in his name. So we both go on title on the middle property and that way again we're talking about 2 different legal partnerships. They're treated as different legal entities, so we have no fear of those titles merging. So those are the 2 solutions that I'm very familiar with. Yeah. Kellen wants to do it differently. I'm not sure, Kellen. Hit up your council person, Jesse Hemler. Yeah. I just tag him in an Old East Village post. Everyone does it whenever they see a snowbank they don't like. So just be like, hey Jesse, I hate merging of titles. What can you do about this? Yeah. And then you'll probably get flamed by a lot of people calling you a rich cat or a fat cat landlord in the Old East Village and hating on you for being a capitalist.
We've got a few people in the comments actually chatting about this too. Yeah. It seems like some people are saying that if you're buying a subdivision where the plans explicitly state the lots, you might not be forced to merge. We're in a bit of a different situation where it's a shared lane, and so my understanding is that the city or the city planner or whatever your region, area, county, whatever you are, they're always going to want to merge those titles back together just to kind of clean those things up so they don't have shared lanes anymore, so they don't have these like shared areas but across 2 properties.
Yeah, and so back to the person talking about the specific subdivisions and stuff, that's a great point. It can depend, and again, like if you're dealing with like condos are going to be a separate beast again. You're not going to have to worry about titles merging in the same sense usually. Maybe there's a couple of weird situations I'm not familiar with, but and that put me completely off track. Back to the subdivisions. So the subdivisions is a great point because if it's been perfectly laid out that way, again, make sure you really understand your local area because it may be very specific to your locality. But the areas we're usually invested in London, Ontario, they're old neighborhoods. So essentially what these were, at one point there would have been like a parcel granted to an individual that might have been like 100 acres or hectares. And then that's slowly been subdivided into multiple lots. And so you end up with like part lots and stuff. And so the fear is the city naturally wants to re-merge these together. Like Adam was saying, it's the same idea as if you have a merged lane, that they'd rather just make everything easy for them, hard for you. But, so yeah, I don't know, jump in the comment section if you guys have better solutions. It's an interesting problem. It usually can be solved with either putting someone on title with you or by setting up a corporation. And the nice thing is, the moment you have the first corporation set up, you can then just kind of play with things all the time, right? So like, let's say, you know, whatever, we weren't really thinking ahead, and lot 1 I bought, my corporation bought, and then we're going to buy lot 3 here. I can just buy it myself again, right? No issue. Or me and my corporation would buy it together. Again, no issue. And so there's lots of different ways to play around with it. Long term, Kellen, honestly, because you seem like you're going to be in real estate for the long haul, setting up a corporation doesn't seem like a bad idea. You're eventually going to max out on your mortgages anyways. So in your situation, I'd be less hesitant about setting up a corporation. The downside is you are going to have more overhead costs associated with that. Your accountant's probably going to charge you more. It's going to be a bit more of a hassle filing your taxes because, like we said, that corporation is a separate legal entity. So, yeah, I hope that helps.
And we're not lawyers, we just play them on the internet.
Yeah, absolutely. As everything, if you sue me, I'm going to be pissed. So far, that's been working out, nice. That disclaimer. So.
Do you want to keep answering some questions? I got a couple other ones here that are asking. Tix13 has this conversation. We've kind of chatted about this recently as well. Is it my responsibility to provide a tenant with a shovel if they ask for one? for to clear snow from the front door?
So,
Regional based?
yeah, so it's really complicated. You know, in Ontario, we'll discuss the Ontario rules first, and then I'll get into your specific situation. So in Ontario, technically, it's always the landlord's responsibility for snow removal. If you're going to make it the tenant's responsibility, you actually need a separate legal contract. You can't just have it be a clause in your lease. Now, technically, lots of us will still just put it as a clause in our lease. And as long as both you and the tenant are reasonable, you can sort that shit out. It's pretty rare that people want to get petty over this stupid stuff, particularly if there's already a fundamental understanding. Sometimes that does happen, though. We've had it happen to us. And it's one of those things where it's frustrating when you came to a gentleman's agreement with a person and then they back out of it and they're able to hide behind that paper shield. So, if you want to make sure that it's your tenant's responsibility in Ontario, Canada, make sure you complete a completely separate legal agreement. And making it sound like a separate legal agreement makes it sound expensive and hard to do. It literally can be drawn up between the two of you on a piece of paper. The key is you want to make sure that voiding this agreement of snow removal doesn't void the lease. If it does that, both will be thrown out and you won't be able to enforce it in any way. Oh shit, sweet, thanks man.
Aiden O'Hare,
oh
just
shit,
keeps giving another super chat, thank you.
Appreciate it, Aiden. Yeah, that's awesome. We've never had someone do two in the same chat, so I'm a little speechless. Yeah. But thank you very much. I'm glad that these videos are giving you value. It really does mean a lot to me that you guys reach out, both just through the comments, through sharing on social media, and by doing super chats. Super chats are fantastic, but I don't want people to feel obliged to do it. It does obviously put a smile on my face, but if you want to pay it forward to me and maybe you don't have the money or just don't want to do a super chat, sharing it on social media does a huge favor to me as well. Sharing it on Facebook or Reddit in particular are massive. But back to the snow removal concept, make sure it's a separate agreement. It's literally just going to be like, whatever, Joe Blow, or no, I was thinking Mr. Plow, I was going to try and be cute, but Joe Blow agrees to do snow removal at 123 Fake Address Street, and that's pretty much all you need. And then there needs to be some sort of compensation. So you can be like, and Matt McKeever, the landlord, agrees to pay $50 per month through these months for that snow removal. And then technically, you could essentially just like net it out against their rent payments. It's important that you have it specifically stated on the separate agreement that's separate from the lease you have with them.
And my understanding is also important that there's actually a money transaction there. Like you could literally say, I'm going to pay you $1 to the
Yes, yeah, there has to be some sort of compensation.
Monetary compensation value.
Yeah, so yeah, they need to receive some sort of benefit for doing it. It can't just be zero. So back to your question though about the shovel. It's one of those things where I guess it depends on the relationship you have with the tenant and if they're a good tenant or not. Usually, you know, to buy a shovel, we're talking somewhere between $10 and $20. I'd often just suck it up and buy that $10 or $20 shovel if it's going to buy me goodwill. Now, if it's the tenant from hell that you gave 2 shovels to at the start of winter and now you're in January and they somehow disappeared, that is a different scenario. You're not obligated, to the best of my knowledge, correct me in the comment section if I'm mistaken, but you're not obligated in Ontario, Canada, to provide your tenant with the means to remove snow or to transport snow or anything like that. So technically, unless you have a written agreement stating that you have to provide them with a shovel, you don't have to. That being said, I think it's a good idea just from a relationship standpoint. If you can have a better relationship for your tenant, it's going to cost you $20 and a snow shovel, I would just do it. It's also a tax write-off, not a big deal. Often, as landlords, we just come across a bunch of snow shovels. Like, I literally just have a pile in different garages, right? Because often tenants will bring their own, they'll buy one, they'll get like half broken, but it's not fully broken, stuff like that. So I don't know if that gives you the answer you wanted, but in general, if it's going to be a $10 or $20 fix, and it's going to build a much better relationship with my tenant, I usually prefer just to do that versus risk compromising the relationship that we've had over a $10 or $20 expense. But if they're total dick, take this with more than a grain of salt and do what's best for you.
Cool. We have 2 questions that are sort of similar. So Alfonso wants to know, should my first property be bought with 5% down and my second one with 20% down? And then Phil had a question, basically, how do you get funding after you have more than 5 properties? Do you go commercial financing? Do you get partnerships?
Sure.
So there's a bit of overlap there.
Yeah. So let's do the first one first. So your first property, should you do 5% down? He's debating. If Michael Roshart's here, I'm sure he's already flaming the comments section with his opinions.
I haven't seen him.
So I'm going to assume Michael's not here to defend himself. So no. In general, it comes down to what your goal is, right? So if you're going to burr this property, putting 5% down isn't necessarily going to be a great idea, because if you're going to refinance in a short period of time, you incur with essentially when you put 5% down in Canada, what we're talking about is an insured mortgage or an FHA loan in the US. I don't know what your fees are in the US, but in Canada, you're talking about potentially, if you're putting only 5% down, several percentages of the property's value. So let's say that property is worth $500,000 and you put in 5% down. You may end up paying a fee of like 2 to 3%. It might even be 4% now. I honestly don't pay attention to it. You can look it up on CMHC's website though to find out the exact amount. But we're talking about several $1,000s minimum that you're going to pay essentially for the right or the privilege to have this insurance, which is going to reduce the amount of down payment you need to put on that property. So if you're buying that first property, it really depends on what that first property is. So if my first property I'm ever buying is going to be a burr, and I have the 20% down, I would not do an insured mortgage. I'd rather use that insured mortgage for a property that's a great investment, but maybe doesn't have burr potential. So maybe it's already a turnkey property, and so I just know that there's no ability to refinance at a higher value because there's no strategic renovations to implement. Maybe it's a property that's well, if it's your first property, that doesn't make sense. Maybe it's a property that you don't plan to own for a long period of time. Again, putting that 20% down and having an open mortgage might be a better investment. So if it's going to be a flip, I wouldn't think it would make sense to do a CMHC mortgage down. Now, the counter argument to what I've just said is, if you don't have the 20% down, but you still want to get into the property, should you consider then in that case doing 5% down? And the answer is complicated. What Michael Roshart would jump in and say is there's always a way to get that other 15% down, and so just find that 15% down through other means in order to get to 20% down to save yourself that CMHC fee. In theory, that's a great answer. In practicality, first of all, where are you finding this 15% down? Odds are you're probably borrowing it from another source, and you're not going to disclose that to the first place mortgager, which they're technically not cool with. Now, lots of real estate investors are able to navigate that minefield without blowing themselves up, which is great for them. But it is important that people really understand the full potential consequences of their actions. So, in my opinion, initially when I started real estate investing, before I was really thinking about burrs, this is kind of how I always thought about it. The way insured mortgages work in Canada currently, and the rules are always changing, so literally tomorrow the Bank of Canada or CMHC could come out and change the rules, so this is only valid in the moment. But I've always thought that, maybe you buy that fourplex, the first fourplex, and maybe it's turnkey and you're going to house hack and you're going to own it forever, but you're really tight on cash. Or maybe you have enough to put, say, 25% down, but you'd rather buy 2 properties. In that case, I'd buy the turnkey property and do, well, if it's a fourplex, you're going to have to put 10% down. If it's a duplex, you can put 5% down in Canada. And I'd buy the first property and do the CMHC insured mortgage. Then on the second property, maybe that's the property that's more distressed that I'm going to burr. That's the property I'd want to put 20% down on. Now, the other thing to be aware of is you only get a few kicks at the can when it comes to insured mortgages, and these rules are constantly changing as well. But the way it used to work is you could get one CMHC insured mortgage, then sometimes they'd let you get a second one if the narrative fit. So maybe you bought a fourplex first, and then realized that living or house hacking wasn't for you, so you're going to buy a single family. They would often let you then go buy that single family or a duplex and do the 5% down again. And so this is a way to kind of stretch your money a lot further than you otherwise would be able to. So that's an interesting alternative. But once you own a couple properties, then it becomes really difficult to ever get an insured mortgage again. I don't know how true this is, but I've been told by multiple different financial institutions that essentially I'll never be able to do an insured mortgage again unless I sold off a lot of my real estate or moved a lot of it over into a corporation. So that's another thing to be aware of. As well, obviously, if you're buying a corporation, you normally aren't going to be able to do an insured mortgage, so that's also just kind of something to think about. So, in general, it really does depend on your situation, and I know that that's the least satisfying answer I can give you, but I think it's the truth. And then on to Phil's question about how do you keep buying more properties once the banks are kind of pushing back at you. It's a question that comes up almost every week on the CF2GO show, and it really comes down to, you got two options in my opinion. Either strategic partnerships where things are being bought on your partner's credit and in your partner's name, or buying through a corporation. The corporation will be treated as a separate legal entity, so that corporation is allowed to rack up a bunch of new mortgages, even though you will probably have to personally guarantee the corporation's mortgages. It's just the way bankers have check boxes, and they just need to check those boxes when they're giving you a mortgage. So you just need to position yourself in such a way that it's easy for them to check those boxes.
A couple close notes with that. Kellen says that CMHC fees is now 4%. Also, Phil was chiming in here, said that apparently refinancing an insured mortgage can't be done anymore. So he's saying that you need to put 20% down if you want to be able to burr it. So.
Yeah, so that's, sorry, I probably wasn't very specific on that, but that's what I meant was, if you're going to burr a property, doing CMHC insured mortgage doesn't make sense, because you don't pay that up. Well, it can in theory under very specific circumstances if you run the numbers well, but in general, what's going to happen is, let's say I buy that property, 5% down, easy numbers, it's worth $100,000. I've paid $4,000 now in CMHC fees essentially to get that mortgage insured. That's tacked on to the principal of the mortgage. So in this case, technically you would think my mortgage is going to be $95,000 if I put 5% down on a $100,000 property, but my mortgage is actually going to be $99,000 or thereabouts. So what that means is when I go to burr, I need to even have a bigger margin. But in addition to that, I still need 20% now in order to refinance the property, if that makes sense. Maybe I'll do a whiteboard on this, because I feel like we're going to get into some numbers and I'll probably even mess them up. But essentially, so in that case, if I'm $100,000 into the property, essentially $99,000 mortgage. Let's say I'm going to spend $20,000 on renovations. That means now I'm going to need to get that appraisal up to $150 in order to get that 20% margin the bank's going to want to see. In addition, you're probably going to incur, I'm almost going to guarantee you're going to incur additional legal fees when you go to do this refinance. So that's going to add some overhead costs. So just a bunch of things you should be aware of. That being said, that's not to say CMHC mortgages are always a bad idea. I think they can be fantastic if you're buying, say, a turnkey property, and particularly if you're just going to house hack in that property for a while. I think it's awesome. It's what I did. I did a weird, I think I did like 10 or 15% down. It made no sense at the time, and it makes no sense even in hindsight today. I don't know. I didn't have a network of awesome people to chat with, so I just did random shit and saw what happened. School of Hard Knocks sucks.
That's right. First time home buyer stuff.
Right? Yeah.
Right on. We didn't really get to Phil's question though, so he wanted to know, after you have 5 properties, what's the next step for you? Do you have to get commercial loaning? Do you have to look for partners?
So after 5 properties, first of all, start talking to other lenders. So again, I'm going to give some fuzzy advice. So this may not work in all circumstances, it may not work for your particular circumstance, but let's say you're 5 mortgages. Ideally, those 5 mortgages are at one financial institution. And often what will happen is if you go to a different financial institution, depending on that institution, they might cut you some slack. Those rules are constantly changing, and there's a bunch of new rules that occurred January 1st. I haven't seen anyone successfully get a 6th mortgage in 2018 using this strategy, but you definitely could in 2017. And so you get your first 5 mortgages, say at CIBC, then you go Bank of Nova Scotia. Bank of Nova Scotia is going to let you get 5 mortgages, and then you're kind of tapped out of that 10 mortgage value. Now, those rules may have changed. It may be a lot harder to convince the bank of that, so I'm going to assume that for the purpose of this. So, we're at 5 mortgages, no lender will lend to you. Well, that's probably not even true. You probably could get hard money lending. You could probably go to a B or C lender. You might have to put more down, but you could probably get around that angle. As well, if you were willing to put 25% or more down on your rental property or the property you're buying, again, those banks that said no to you because you have 5 mortgages, they may become more receptive if you're putting down a larger down payment. Now, you watch my show, you want to get properties for free because you love burring, so that's a shitty idea. We'll set that aside. So the other alternative is you can find a partner. And so in this case, let's say I got 5 mortgages, I can go to Adam and say, hey man, let's buy a rental property together. The way it's going to work is we're going to buy it in your name, and you're going to qualify for the mortgage, blah, blah, and we'll buy the property together. I'm going to bring the expertise in the deal, and that's how we're going to do it. Or we can still just sort things out on our own. There's a lot of details here you need to figure out. I'm just giving you the idea, giving you the seed. You're going to have to nurture it into an actionable process. But essentially, Adam could go buy that rental property, and after he's bought it, we could become partners on it 50-50 after the fact. Whole bunch of different landmines you can potentially step on in that environment, but that's one alternative. The other alternative is set up a corporation. The corporation is going to be considered a separate legal entity, and that corporation is going to have no problem, assuming everything else is fine, getting at least 5 mortgages. In that case, worst case scenario, you may have to set up another corporation and repeat the process over and over again. Up until this point, I haven't had issues with them maxing out my corporation. Sometimes they'll look at the total borrowed amount. Sometimes they just want to make sure that you have enough margin between the appraised value and the debt, so that you have more than, say, 20 or 30% equity in the property. Sometimes they just want you to personally guarantee it. In that case, then they'll go above. There's a lot of situations here. An alternative, if you're married, your partner could be buying it, and depending on exactly how, or like, say you're not married, but you have a partner, blah, blah, whatever, you can go about it that way. So yeah, so I think it really comes down to, if you see yourself doing real estate for a long period of time, there's nothing wrong with setting up a corporation. In Canada, the reason that I don't recommend setting up a corporation as often as you probably see US people recommending this, your risk profile is significantly less of being sued for something in Canada. You should still probably have an umbrella policy over all your properties. We have like a $2 million umbrella. It's really not that expensive to get it. And the nice thing is, once you have it, each additional property you buy isn't going to add additional cost to your overhead. So if you're going to be in real estate for the long haul and you see yourself owning way more than 5 properties, way more than 5 mortgages, probably setting up that corporation is a bad idea. Otherwise, make strategic partnerships or just talk to other lenders until you get the answer you want.
Yeah. Right on. A couple other questions. I know we're getting close to our wrap-up time here, but Triggs13, I was chatting with him here. He was looking for, are there any more tax write-offs I should know about other than the main ones like mortgage interest, property taxes, house insurance, and utilities? I'd suggested probably repairs and maintenance would be one thing.
So repairs and maintenance.
Another one would maybe be like management fees if you're paying any other services for.
Yeah. And same with, like there's sometimes things people overlook, like maybe you paid for a boosted ad on Kijiji.
Yeah.
That's advertising you could write off, right? You may have accounting fees, right? So if you have an accountant or bookkeeper prepare your let's say you even own a property just personally, so like Matt McKeever owns 2 properties. Let's say I live in the one and I rent out the other one as an income property, and I pay my accountant to do all my income taxes. I can write off at least a portion of that accountant's fees against the income I'm earning on that rental property. Talk to your accountant to find out what amount they're comfortable having you write off. It's going to really depend on the exact situation, but that is an area I often see people overlook, is being able to write off the accounting fees. And just one thing to be aware, like you're writing off last year's accounting fees. Sometimes people think that they're trying to write off this year, but it's the year you incur the expense, blah, blah, blah. Your accountant will explain it to you. And if you don't got a good accountant, hit up our boy Mitt CPA. You can find him on Facebook. He's often in the comment section. So yeah, so Mitt can also be a great resource for any other questions. Otherwise, there's a few other areas, but I almost hesitate telling you about them just because we need to really explain the full scope and situation. If you have a bunch of properties and maybe you use part of your own personal residence as an office, there's maybe potential to write off some of those costs that you incur on your principal residence because it's an office. Alternatively, you could maybe write off some of your vehicle expense or your mileage to and from the property. But again, there's some very specific rules there, so make sure you read that up. If you're in Canada, literally just pull out the T776, I think it is, Mitt, correct me if I'm wrong, and just read it through. There's like on CRA's website, you can read and it'll lay out for you exactly all the information you need. The only additional information from that would be like case law if you're getting into really specific scenarios.
Yeah, actually a follow-up question is wondering, what about like costs related to closing. So like lawyers' fees.
Yeah, so
costs.
a lot of the costs associated with your closing are actually associated with acquiring the property. So that should usually be added to your adjusted cost based on the property. So when you go to sell the property, let's say I bought it for $100,000, then I had $5,000 in closing costs, and then next year I go and sell it for $120,000. Instead of writing that $5,000 off against the rental income for the year, technically I'm supposed to add it to the cost base. And then when I go and sell it for that $120,000, instead of subtracting the $100,000, I subtract $105,000 as my cost basis, which means I'm only going to pay capital gains on that $15,000 spread. But some things that people don't realize they can write off is when you buy a rental property, it's pretty rare that you buy it perfectly. So as in the owner hasn't overpaid some, say, for property taxes. So you have that statement of adjustments, which has a bunch of different little things. And so one of the adjustments probably will say property taxes. It might only be $5, it could be $500. That is a current expense that you can write off in that tax year. And a lot of people that aren't paying attention just bundle it all together with their closing costs and add it to their adjusted cost base when it technically should be a separate line item. In Canada, because when you sell a property as capital gains, that's a more favorable tax position than if you're earning active income. So making sure that you pull out that property tax expense from the statement of adjustments and apply it to this year's taxable earned income is actually more favorable because you're paying a higher tax rate as your personal income versus your capital gains rate. So that's a little tip. A lot of this is minutia, and none of this is probably going to make or break you as a real estate investor. It's just best practices. So just trying to share those with you guys.
And so like probably things like the inspection, the home inspection costs associated with that. So if we're talking about a few $100s at this point, could be part of your closing costs as well, kind of associated in that adjustment.
Yeah, I think that, I don't know for sure.
It'd be pretty nitty gritty on your tax savings.
I think the home inspection technically should be ACB related. Mitt, you can correct me, but the reason that probably should be an adjusted cost basis added to the value of the property rather than written off in the tax year simply is it was part of the acquisition of the property rather than the day-to-day management or maintenance of the property. Trying to think, I felt like there's maybe one other thing. I forget if I mentioned cell phone, but depending on the situation, you may be able to write off part of your cell phone or your home internet. Again, it's really going to depend on your exact situation. I'd love for you to talk to an accountant or a professional, or just thoroughly read through the T776 before you make the decisions on what to write off. But that's a great starting point. And one tax tip that, actually I'm going to do a separate video on this, but if you do use a bookkeeper or an accountant, and say you want to make their lives easier or maybe try and reduce the fees they're charging you, what you can do is set your expenses up so that they fit into kind of the setup that an accountant's going to use when they file your taxes. So use the use the expense categories that are on that T776. In addition, if you do feel comfortable filing your own taxes, I can't recommend enough using Simple Tax. Simple Tax is like the Apple product for Canadian taxes. Fantastic, like it's a small little, like it's a family operation that do it. It's free, it's only donation based, but when you do file your taxes, they're going to show you a photo that's going to guilt you into making a donation. And do it, they earned it, in my opinion. I usually donate at least a bit of money, and it's way better than any of the other free software I've ever dealt with. And it's better than going, in my opinion, to H&R Block or those other service providers. Essentially, if you're a real estate professional, if you're a real estate investor and you're going and getting your taxes filed at one of those places that pays you your refund in advance, I got a feeling that you probably could be serviced better by looking elsewhere. So there's just a little tip for you guys.
That's a nice way to put it. I think we're getting closer to our wrap-up time. I just wanted to do a shout-out to Bill W. Earlier in the show, we were talking about our renovations from hell. He was asking about if he could get more information with that. I think that's maybe something for another show, or maybe a video we could do together.
Yeah, we definitely should.
Yeah, because we would need some time.
And we learned some lessons from it
too. Absolutely. So unless you want to keep going, I think we're at 6:30 now. So.
All right. Well, first of all, smash the like button if you haven't smashed it. Where are we at?
We got 26 viewers, 24 likes.
Oh man, this was our first downvote on the live show.
Is it me, guys?
So
Is it my fault?
Super chats and downvote, I'll take it. We'll call it a wash. No, I really appreciate everyone that tuned in this video, everyone that's tuned in from the beginning of the CF2GO show. Again, Jeff unfortunately couldn't be here, but I know he wanted to be here and he'll be here next week. And yeah, it's been a really fun start to 2018, and I think there's a lot more to come. One of the things that I kind of wanted to tease that 2018 is going to bring up is myself and Adam here are going to be starting a YouTube channel. And I was about to say the name, but then I realized that's probably not wise until we actually have got the YouTube channel.
Yeah, sure.
So, but look for that. It's going to be kind of talking about just more generalities, more like life hacking, maybe thoughts and opinions on politics, society, and world stuff, and also just kind of having some fun. So look for that. It'll be coming out. Otherwise, definitely check out the On Fire podcast that Kellen and myself do every week, every week-ish at least. And if you're interested in being on the podcast, definitely hit us up. We're always looking for guests. And if you've been on the podcast and want to come back on another one, again, hit us up. We're always happy to repeat guests because it's honestly, we just want to document cool people and what they're doing with their lives. And I don't think that there's a lot of podcasts out there. A lot of the podcasts in this sphere, in my opinion, already focus on people that have made it. And we just want to document people that are making it rather than have already made it. So yeah, appreciate you guys taking the time to watch. Make sure if you're watching this after we recorded, jump in the comment section and give your props to Adam for coming from behind the camera.
Let me know how I did. It was nice to sit in front of the camera for once. Hopefully I did okay.
I don't. Was Carlos going to start up a beer squad or beer squad?
I don't know. I didn't see Carlos in here today. Also, people asking when it starts. It's at 5:30 every Friday Eastern Standard Time, so you guys can tune in then. Other than that, if you guys want to follow me on Instagram, you can find me at ASteeper, or follow me on YouTube. It's randomly interesting.
Nice.
That's my plugs.
Okay, awesome. And yeah, I think that makes as much sense as anything else for us to wrap it up. So Adam's going to walk around and turn the camera off, and I'll see you guys in the next video. I appreciate you taking the time to watch. Bye! And now the awkward